Steiner said a third of the population by this year will be zombies. And what he meant by that was they won't be fully incarnated into their body. Their soul is going to be spliced. I feel like there's accuracy to that.
Yeah, agreed. Welcome to another episode of the Mark Rose podcast. This has been a long time coming. I have founder of Cymbiotika, Chervin Jafarieh.
No, that was sexy. That was just really well done, Mark.
Right? I feel like I'm from the old country too now.
Yeah, you got to say it with a little bit of an accent. Chervin Jafarieh.
Chervin Jafarieh. Not bad, right?
Yeah, no. It's powerful. Chervin means king of lions.
Oh, that hat then that I wore that was fitting. Did you get one?
I didn't get one, but I need one for sure.
Yeah, for context, I was on Chervin's pod and I had a hat that said lion on it. Yeah, man, we've had a lot of jam sessions. They've all been great. It's about time that we put a microphone to you and had you on the pod. I mean, I discovered you years ago on your Instagram, just would get random quotes with your name on it and be like, who is this guy? He is saying some savage, badass shit, just telling the truth. And I was so happy when we were finally connected. So for you listening, you're about to be in for a treat. Let's just start out on a very zoomed out, and I just like to see where your soul goes with this. Where are we at as humanity? Where are we at?
I think we're at the 11th hour. And I don't mean that like doomsday. I mean it's decision time. I think we've finally caught up to a lot of the ravaging that's been going on over the last 150 years. All the mechanistic material thinking has led us astray, led us away from the spirit. And I think there is a revolution happening right now, and it's a spiritual revolution. And I think a lot of us are, I wouldn't say waking up, but in fact, ascending into our soul's journey, devoutly honoring the path. And that's what I'm seeing across the board in the communities that I'm involved with, and the people that I'm around, and the people that I share company with. The line in the sand has been drawn, and I'm not a dualistic kind of person. I don't believe in it's got to be this way or the other way. I don't. But there are certain things that you really just don't cross the line with. And we've been crossing those lines habitually for years now. And it's showing up in a lot of the systems that we're seeing right now falling apart. It's clear to me, and it's clear to so many, that we're going to have to amend our ways and get back to an intuitive way of thinking with reason, combining that with pure logic, and coming, as you know, from a place of love. The fear has tightened the grip on humanity in so many ways. Fear of losing your loved one, fear of your health, fear of your financial situation, fear of your religion, fear of this, like fear. And as you know, with what you do and the light that you bring to this world, when you're operating in fear, not love, you're fracturing your ability to expand anywhere that you want to go. That's ultimately going to bring happiness and joy and heaven on earth. And so I think that's where we're at as a world. And I think more people are jumping on board, and more people are practicing discernment and flexing that muscle. While there is a good portion of the population that are continuing to be railroaded into a direction of darkness, a direction of escapism, and a very shrouded outlook on what this life is. And so it's fitting that we're having this conversation on February 27th, which is Dr. Rudolf Steiner's birthday, the creator of anthroposophy, which is the, anthro meaning man, Sophia, wisdom, the wisdom of man and our creative consciousness, our super sensible knowledge of stepping into our higher power and seeing things not just in material form, but a sensory that's acclimating to every nuance and every energetic out there. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think that's where we're at in this world. And I think people just want to feel loved and be recognized, and be part of something. So we're seeing all these communities pop up, and, it's really interesting time. I'm glad we're here. We've incarnated here at this time. I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too, man. It feels like a really, like you said, 11th hour, this intersection of like, maybe we're feeling the pain of Mother Earth. Maybe we're feeling the pain of constant extrapolation. I wonder if that level of extraction, exhaustion is due to the amplification of it due to social media. Like, social media ultimately is an extraction machine. Not to say that it doesn't have really wonderful, it's, also, I think in some ways, the digitalization or the experience of access to consciousness. So it's a weird, like, there's a shadow side to everything. And it's almost like the shadow side to social media and the internet is that we, much like anything that's good, we can easily as humans just get so consumed by it. You know, if we are not in charge of our consumption, which I'm sure probably metaphorically speaks to so much stuff. What do you think about that?
You hit it right on the nail. Social media is the ultimate paradox of our time. It goes really deep into the fabric of our inner knowing and our activity in these lives, in these bodies, and our purpose-driven life, while also providing so much beauty and so much learning and so much connection. Some person's form of poison is some person's form of medicine. We have to discern how we're operating with these technologies to be able to experience 1,000 different people's lives in a span of 15, 20 minutes. We don't know exactly what that's doing to us. We don't know what that's doing to our soul, our journey, our immune system, our epigenetic factors. We don't know. We can postulate. I think Bruce Lipton broke that down pretty well in the biology of belief about technology and some of these things, which just came out of nowhere and just changed the entire landscape of how we are doing things. I think it gets very, very sketchy when you have children getting sucked into that metaverse or that alternate reality. They're not given the opportunity to be exercising faculties that are extremely necessary for becoming human being. Some of those faculties are survival skills. Some of those faculties are empathy. I always found it to be extremely important that every child is taught where food is coming from. In fact, shown how to grow food. But with social media, we seem to get sucked into the escapism behavior as well, which is why I really love your content and a lot of other people's content that is showing up, because it's not something that you are providing so someone can falsely escape their current reality. In fact, it's the opposite. And that's something that I take very serious. I will not participate in the lies and the shadow of escapism. So if you come to my profile and you come to what I put out there, it's not to just get rid of your reality. In fact, it's the opposite. It's putting you right back into your body and making you think. We have to be very careful with what we're doing. And social media was supposed to be the antithesis of mainstream media, when in fact, social media has now become mainstream media.
Yeah.
I would say the same directives that control mainstream media have made its way into the social landscape. It's very similar, like cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. They've been infiltrated. So we have to practice discernment. We got to be careful because energy exchanges are real. Whether you're meeting someone, for coffee or at a gathering, or staring at them on this electronic device and feeling they're conscious. It's very interesting. We soak up all that data. We soak up all that information. We get it from our auditory file, we get it from our visual, and those things embed into the fabric of our lives. And I always wonder, I was like, if I wasn't being absorbed with all these different ideas and concepts and thoughts and things like that, how much more free will would I have every single day
Mm.
to get closer and closer to whatever it is that I want to achieve in this life? It's very fascinating. And it's a paradox that I have to work through, because part of my reality is being on social media, and I'm part of that very nature of paradoxical life. It takes evaluation, it takes review. And again, it goes back to anthroposophy, right? Which is the wisdom of a human being. It's really taking into account how things are affecting you and what is it about a certain thing that is creating a repetitive action where you keep coming back to it. Is this something that's creating a balance, or is this something that has become another form of addiction or another drug, another dopamine hit? And that's something that most people don't really think about, but we have to get honest with ourselves. I think clearing your social media, clearing your browser, clearing your friends list, you're really doing a forensic audit on what you're doing on there is critical for the next 12 months of your life.
Well, I don't think a lot of us even take the time to sit with that level of responsibility for what we're consuming, because it's almost like so much of our consumption is unconscious now. It's so passive. And because I think the switch here is that the algorithm is determining through so many different inputs and mechanisms what is going to be the thing that's going to keep us on the platform. But formerly, social media was something we just followed people and we just got the content of the people we followed, so we could kind of check in and check out. But as they started to see things like how the like button impacts, I'm very cautiously, I don't even know that I'm optimistic. I think I'm just cautious about the movement forward of AI and things like chat GBT or whatever it's called, because you kind of look at these things and, I asked it a question. I just wanted to see, like, is this thing biased? And I asked about vaccines. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even get the vaccine right, like what kind it was. But it was like, yes, incredible, like just so pro. It was like they had just taken a marketing message from CNN or something and just like input it into this thing that combs tons of data and is supposed to give an objective. But I could already see this slant. And I just see that so much algorithmically. And we now know through things that have come out, like the Twitter files, just how much of what is being shaped in our, like, essentially whoever controls media controls society.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't know, I've felt that the more technology in my life actually makes me feel more anxious. And so there's like something about moving out of my body. And I know you have this intersection where you really think a lot about biology and physiology and illness and wellness and all that stuff. And I'm curious what you think about this intersection of AI and epigenetics. If we created this, does that mean our biology in some way can also use it as a healing mechanism? Like
I know
I don't
exactly
know.
what you're saying. Yeah, I this is a really interesting conversation to be had, and I'm glad you and I are doing this because I think you can hold space for this, and it can allow us to go into the depths. This was a conversation that I've been having for the last 10, 15 years. So again, not to keep going back to Rudolf Steiner,
It
which is
is his
his
birthday.
birthday.
So, I
So
mean,
let's
yeah, let's
let's
party it up.
let's give him some love. Rudolf Steiner predicted 100 years ago that today we're going to be entering what he called the center point of the Ahrimanic impulse. Ahriman is the deity of materialism. He's the demon of materialism, science, government, technology, corporatocracy, social security number. You're a material mechanistic being. There's no spirit. It's straight, it's bones, it's calcium, it's into the earth. That's it. And he said that if we don't shake off that impulse, that in the next 20 years, we're going to enter something called the eighth sphere, which is a very dystopic reality, completely disconnected from nature, disconnected from our ancestors, disconnected from purpose. It's just going to be straight craziest level of materialism. And if you look at the trajectory that we're on, we're kind of going in that direction with
Feels like we might be there almost,
we might already be there, but imagine 20 years from now, right? With that same velocity, because we're having generations losing this. We've forgotten what we've forgotten, our connection to our past, our connection to our mother, all of these things. And so AI, my belief, so Steiner believes that Ahriman, which is a Persian deity, by the way, actually incarnates in human form in the 21st century. My take is that incarnation is through AI, and AI merges with human being and creates AI human beings just through their own perspective. And you can see that on just how much our lives are already dictated around the technology, right?
yeah.
And technology is sold to us for what? For convenience, for protection, making things easier. When this entire time, technology seems to be a big Trojan horse for something that we can't account for and we can't see. And we're so caught up in the ego of being this technological, pioneers, that we have no idea what we're robbing ourselves for tomorrow, for today, and all these things. The AI is real. It's here. We have to be very, very careful with it. And we all have to have a level of discernment on how we operate with it and what we're prepared to do and not do. I personally don't want no part of it. Just energetically through my coding,
Same.
it doesn't sit with me at all. I remember 2-3 months ago, everyone was all of a sudden getting enamored by getting this AI picture of them online. I think
Oh,
you
I saw
remember.
that. Yeah.
I was the first person, someone at my stature was the first person that spoke out against it. I was very, very keen on a high level of discernment looking at that whole situation. And I actually did a whole podcast with Paul Chek on that. I looked through the fine print of that entire thing, and you're basically signing over your entire signature of your face for future technologies that haven't even existed. And they own the rights to that. And that's a
Wow.
very, very dark order. And they dangled that carrot by the opposite influence or force, opposite of Ahriman, which is the Luciferic impulse, which is the beauty, the bearer of light, the savior. And I saw all the same spiritual people run headfirst into that whole trap. It was unbelievable watching that happen unfold in front of us. It was like we predicted this whole thing. And a lot of people, after some thought, they're like, wait a second, what did I just do? And so we got to be careful because technology and AI and all these things, Chat GTP or whatever, they're shiny. It's like this dangling this forbidden fruit. Take you back to Adam and Eve, right? And we got to be very careful. At the end of the day, rebuilding our faculties, understanding who we are, what our purpose is, understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are, very important. Building out friendships and bonds, brothers and sisters coming together, uniting, not coming from a place of poverty, not coming from a place of scarcity mentality, clear communications, practicing clear levels of love in their relationships. These are fundamental to us getting through whatever this challenge is. Without those things, there's no way of holding on because that energy is going to take a percentage of humanity with them. That's a fact. Steiner said a third of the population by this year will be zombies. And what he meant by that was they won't be fully incarnated into their body. Their soul is going to be spliced. I feel like there's accuracy to that,
Yeah, agreed.
and it's not a judgment. It's just assessing where we are today in this current state of affairs in whatever dimension this is, whatever reality this is. Because we don't know anything. The science likes to tell us everything, but at the end of the day, it's just movies. It's just Hollywood. We have no idea who we are, where we are, why we are, all of those things. We've just kind of like neglected that research studying and all that kind of stuff. It's now we're just living in some kind of like pseudo fantasy, and we're so stuck to materialism. Whatever the system is, whoever they are, whatever, has built this system based on that. And when you have a population that's just trying to figure out how they're going to pay the rent, how to feed their children, and where to get clean water, these kinds of conversations sometimes are difficult to have because you have to meet people where they're at. And so I have compassion for everyone I come across in this world, which is, again, another Steiner perspective, is you got to meet people where they're at and pass no judgment. You take every communication as an experience to learn and to see and evaluate your own tools and see your own triggers. That's really important. I think you speak on that a lot too, like in relationship. What are these patterns that keep coming, and why aren't we having breakthroughs? Why do we keep breaking up? It's the same old pattern over and over. I think we need to be doing that with ourselves every day, evaluating our reality. And I think that's a very important lesson to offer ourselves. That's truly what self-love is, right? Creating momentum in the way that you treat yourself, stop neglecting what your body is telling you. If you're having a pain in your side or your muscles are twitching and you keep having a irregular heartbeat and your skin's dry and your eyes are red and you have dry mouth all the time and you can't sleep properly and you seem to be depressed all the time, your body is speaking to you. So the act of self-love is to not keep dismissing that or hiding it or suppressing it, but it's to go directly into it and really figuring it out. And so just like anything else, back to the root of your question, I think technology, there's some beautiful aspects to it, and it's part of our construct. We're here. It is what it is. But we have to operate with technology working with us, not against us, and not leading us in terms of our conscious thought. Let's evolve and continue to evolve and let technology help that evolution as opposed to leading the evolution or de-evolution. A very dangerous game we're playing. Are you familiar with the Internet of Eyes?
No.
So during COVID lockup, they went out all over the world, China, USA, UK, I mean, Australia, everywhere.
Probably Canada, let's be
Canada,
honest.
oh, Canada,
For sure.
100%.
They probably signed up first.
Yeah, they probably did sign up because you know who's running that country. And
Yeah.
so you got cameras everywhere now. Billions and billions of cameras are on every street corner, every pass, everywhere. They call that the Internet of Eyes.
Mm,
And not to mention all the cell phones, everyone's got a camera. So there's
right.
so much data being compiled right now. It's extraordinary. And that data is your algorithmic thinking. That's your mechanistic material thinking. It's really interesting what they're doing with that data. You'd think that we are the ones paving the way, when in fact, it might not even be us that's paving the way, but something that's being programmed within us.
We need to talk about my morning routine. I'm nailing it. I got meditation, breath work, some cold plunging, workouts. And, most of you have probably tried meditation. I'm guessing for some of you, it is part of your morning ritual. But have you tried breath work? That's my question. I took a class on an app that I'm just loving, and I'm hooked on it. The app is unbelievable, and it's called Open. I had the founder, Minaj Diaz, on the podcast a few times because he's an incredible teacher and he really lives everything that he shares. And the app is incredible. The design is insane. Some of the benefits that I've really experienced from implementing this in my morning routine is I sleep better, I'm less stressed, and I have more energy and focus throughout the day. And the best part about Open is that the classes are under 10 minutes. So it's easy to stick with. It's not like an overwhelming thing. It's actually quite simple. And so usually what I'll do is a meditation, breath work, and then they also have movement classes. So it's easy to just have consistent morning routines because you can go to one place and it's just that much easier. It's definitely different from other mindfulness apps out there, and you're definitely going to know what I mean when you try it. You get 30 days for free when you sign up with my code CreateTheLove. So you just visit withopen.com/createthelove. So again, you get 30 days free, so you got no risk on Open, and you just go to withopen, withopen.com/createthelove. Go check it out. Yeah, you add to that, Tesla is one of the largest surveillance networks, right? Because they have so many cameras on all their cars. They have lots of cars out there. And the Ring cameras that people have around their homes.
Yeah, I want no part of either of those things.
Well, it's wild that we sign up for these things, right? Like you said, as a model of convenience. And so we are actually, even having smartphones, which, most people have, and we think that there's a high level of privacy or a high level. I remember I did 23andMe, not thinking about it. I did it like 15 years ago, and yeah, I asked to delete my DNA, but let's be honest, it's probably not deleted. I just never really considered all this because I think one thing that's become more clear in the last 3 years for me is that I very naively, as a Canadian, believed that the government would never, they have our best interests in mind, and the media does too. And, we hadn't dealt with maybe the same level of division that the US experienced in the last election, or sorry, the 2015 one. I've just started to see just how we walk ourselves into it, and even as you said, a lot of the population will just want to install something like Neuralink. They'll just want to install because they think it's an upgrade. And I think that shows what I've started to maybe or continue to deepen my awareness of is that I actually no longer believe technology is access to brilliance. It's trying to model, and through all this AI stuff, what is inherently nature is so brilliant. It doesn't make mistakes. And at the end of the day, I even think the planet's going to be fine. All the conversation about climate and all that, the planet will be fine. It'll just shake like a wet dog and humans will be gone, and then it will thrive. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the impact of all of this and what you're seeing in terms of how it's expressing biologically.
Yeah.
And especially, have you noticed a difference in the last 10 years? What's expressing biologically, or 15?
I mean, we can get into so many different aspects of health and vitality and longevity and senolytic activators and all that stuff, which we might get into. But these are the conversations that need to be had that are imperative for today, for, for us to move forward and see what's going on. And it always comes back to the farm. I keep thinking about, how are we going to sustain life? And how do we get back to a level of thriving and not just surviving? Because we seem to be on this survival train now.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of sickness going on today is staggering. And the statistics and the real empirical data that I'm looking at is mind-boggling and scary. It's directly correlated with the way we're living our lives today. So disconnected from nature, so disconnected from our stewardship of nature. They say you want your relative or your parent to live longer, you get them a dog, right? Something that they can take care of. Well, why does that keep them alive longer? Why does that keep their immune system stronger? Well, they feel responsible, right? They
Mm.
feel like they have to show up to be around to take care of this animal. And this has been studied. This isn't placebo. This is real data. I feel like we don't have stewardship anymore. And so we have really nothing to live for except, some forms of entertainment. And those entertainments are just traps. What's this whole world become? It's we're chasing after this event and sports and all these things. And don't get me wrong, I love sports, but we're missing the nucleus of our reasons for being here. It's all about being entertained as opposed to participating in our future. And that lack of stewardship, that lack of having your hands in the dirt, that lack of, protecting and serving as the protector and the pillar of the community is disintegrating our entire ethos and our reasons for being alive. And you then turn to other things like aforementioned. So I think that's a very important part that we're missing right now,
Mm-hmm.
is this commitment to show up. And that's not just for men, that's for women as well. Everyone needs to show up and have that and feel like they are needed. Without feeling like you're needed, you become a shell of yourself. That's something that everyone can meditate on. Looking at this whole technological revolution, the industrial revolution, the fact that there's no mid-sized farms anymore, and we're monocropping everywhere. We fracked North America to death. A lot of the aquifers have been destroyed, and go on and on and on. This has nothing to do with global warming or any of that. This is just a high pollution situation, or we're in a toxic loaded environment. My cousin has been saying this for a while. He says, detoxification might be more important than nutrition these days. And that's a
Mm.
really, really powerful statement. If you grasp what that means that, my God, what are we subjected to on a daily basis? And so for me, we have to take it into our commitment for our lives to step forward and find solid truths that work with us and get back to the fundamentals. And look, no, you don't have to do that, but this is just you and I riffing and where my advice comes. There's no one out there that's going to save you. The medical
Mm-hmm.
system's not going to save you. This supplement's not going to save you. That doesn't work that way. You have to build foundational health in your mind, body, and soul. You have to have a practice. You have to have rituals. We seem to have become so lazy that just seeing somebody else do a ritual, that kind of takes it up for us. There's there's something
Like,
to
you
that,
meditate? Perfect. I don't have to.
right? Like, just knowing someone else is doing the work or is out there doing it kind of satisfies us. That's a part of social media that's dangerous, right? Because your brain sometimes can't recognize it because you're experiencing what they're experiencing. You're getting the endorphins, you're getting that kick, and all of a sudden, you're not motivated to do that. It's kind of like the whole dopamine release, right? The orgasm. Well, the true dopamine release is the dopaminergic balance that slowly makes its way up to that final, cathartic release, or that expansion or activation, whatever you want to call it. That's a muscle that has to be exercised. And I don't care who you are, me, whoever you, all of us, we all have a level of inactivity in certain things, and we get the satisfaction because we know someone else is doing it, or we watched it
Mm-hmm.
on TV, or we watched it on our phones. And that's something that's very dangerous in my opinion. You throw that in with all the tech, with all the convenience, like come on, like we already know we're living in artificial boxes, right? That are completely temperature controlled, that are lighting controlled. But now we're not even having to go and get our own food.
Yeah.
DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever is bringing food to people's door. They walk like 8 steps and then take on a massive meal that's filled with God knows what's in there. You do that for 2 years, you're setting yourself up for so many diseases, it's not even funny, and you're miserable. Not to mention all the other things that is probably involved in between. People always come to me and say, hey, Chervin, how do I detox? How do I cleanse? How do I get to the best health ever? How do I do these things? And I always say there's nothing exotic here. It's just you need to start removing things in your life that are causing massive amounts of stagnation, that are stagnating your mind, your body, and your soul, and causing you to hate yourself internally. I think there's a lot of self-loathing going on, and it's for good reason. People have been shut down so hard that they're in that state of confusion and anger within. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why social media and mainstream media and all this stuff has built its entire empire on drama, on pain, on gossip, on all of these destructionary like modalities, because it feels good when you're in pain. If you're in pain, you're sick, you're self-loathing, you're not taking care of yourself, you're fall behind on all your responsibilities, you're not accomplishing what your soul's journey is, you're living a false identity. I'm telling you pretty much you're searching for other people's failures.
Mm-hmm.
You're searching for the demise of someone, the drama, and hearing drama of somebody else's lives. It's a drug. It takes you out of your own shit. And that right there is destruction. It's the opposite of God. It's the opposite of eternal truth. It's the opposite of any of Christ's teachings or any religious undertones for that matter. And that is, in my opinion, Mark, one of the fatal situations that we have going on right now, which is also a parasitic energy. We just filmed a podcast on parasites, but we got into the spiritual aspect of the parasitic influence.
Yeah.
Living in the host and sucking the host dry and just keeping them alive energetically. That's kind of what I feel is going on. The social experiment is, it's survival of the fittest to a certain extreme, but it's preying off the demise of people and the dysfunction of our lives. I find it to be one of the most clear projections I can give someone the opportunity to snap out of it is by really looking at how they are in their pattern of escapism and what they're choosing to bring into their world and why. And most of it's unconscious, like you said, but that's when you're really deep in your pattern. Your unconscious is choosing everything for you. We could talk about all the steps, join our fruit tree planting foundation, get on the island, start learning about biodynamics, start building momentum in your life, switch, get a shower filter, start drinking clean water, stay off the fast food, eat good butter, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, start there, start these processes, start building friendships with people that are better than you. And what I mean by better than you, I mean that people that have been doing the work and are responsible and have a discipline. Discipline seems to be like shunned out in the spiritual community for whatever reason. Discipline is everything. It's being a disciple, right? Like being
Mm.
a disciple, being an initiate. That's true spirituality. Having yourself trained. I mean, that's why the masters ahead of us are so powerful in their influence and what they were able to achieve hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. I was going back and forth with Serena Dyer, a good friend of mine. Her dad, Dr. Wayne Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
had a strong impact on my life.
Same.
So she, me and her, we talk pretty occasionally. For me, I asked her, I said, what separated your dad from so many people, from your opinion? She's like, his discipline.
Mm.
He had his practice. And that practice was basically self-love,
Mm.
right? We think that, getting up at 5:30, drinking your clean water, doing some inversions, getting your breath work in, doing some stretching, that's a chore. It's not. It's a
Yeah.
practice of self-love, and it starts to build momentum in other areas of your life. Because if you're getting up at 5:30 every day with the sun and doing those things for yourself, you're going to want to keep doing those things, and you're going to push away things that are going to take you off your track. That weekend of drinking with the same crew, that weekend of getting into weird drugs and weird relationships and all that kind of stuff, or being around people that are constantly all they care about is material shit. It's just so left brain, so obtuse way of thinking, where your soul is crumbling within you.
Well, a few thoughts on that. One, I was listening to, I don't know if you know who Jess Sims is, but she's a teacher on Peloton. And I heard her say the other day that discipline's what gets you up. Then motivation can meet you there, which I was like, oh, that's so true. That's such a differentiation between discipline and motivation. Like, you don't need motivation to get up, you need discipline to get up. And whenever I'm in a state of high stress and my rituals go away, so does my wellness, so does my well-being. And they're usually the things we need most are usually the first things that disappear, which is the irony. It's like we need nutrition in every aspect of our life, but when we're in states of high fear and high stress, we eat the chips, the seed oils, the high sugar, which, God, if they keep us in a state of high fear, which if you consume the news, you can't be any other way. Like there's so many layers to this, because it's like, never did we know what was going on 1,500 miles away, or like on the other side of the earth. We don't have the nervous system capacity to hold all the drama in the world, because we were meant to just hold the drama of our community. That, I think the cost on the
That's it right
nervous,
there.
well, I think the cost on the nervous system is interesting, because if I couple that to one thing you said about parasites, and I think about God Saad's book, The Parasitic Mind, and he talks about like these ideas, these parasitic ideas that they get with social media, which I would say, if we're looking at the shadow side of social media, it is a parasitic amplifier. As much as it can amplify good things, humans unconsciously don't tend to be drawn towards good. They like drama, they like pain, they like suffering. If it bleeds, it leads. It's a real interesting paradox, because of course our bodies like to be in a state of peace, but yet we're drawn towards, fight or flight, right? It makes sense that I'm programmed to be vigilant, but if I don't actually, which I think is consciousness or awareness increasing, is I'm starting to think about what are my programs and where do they lead me, and are they good? We didn't have the capacity and the awareness and maybe the space to be able to explore those things. And you were saying, meet people where they're at. If you're really terrified about whether you're going to pay your rent, you're going to have a harder time philosophizing your well-being, but it has to start somewhere, because the only thing that you think of, the things that are free that create wealth, but I mean wealth in terms of well-being, the things that are free that free you up then to have more space to access more levels of whatever that means. So I'm curious from a nervous system perspective, and then also because you talk a lot, and the things I really like learning from you are about like what's going on a cellular level, and I would imagine, just based on all the research now on psychoneuroimmunology and the effects of how thoughts and even who we surround ourselves with impact our physiology. Like, and if we're around people, who are growth minded, who have good practices, we're going to start to absorb those practices. We're going to start to absorb their health, not in a bad parasitic way, but in a way where we're like, look how much they're thriving. I want to thrive. And that becomes addictive. It's a different form of addiction. And then you don't crave all the other shit. So what comes up for you in that?
I think you know more than most people, at least better than me, that we desire love, right? We want to be loved. It's in our greatest capacity to be loved and to give love back, right? So we are a species of people that want that connection, and they want to be seen. Everyone has different love languages, but I think at the root of love language is affirmation, confirmation, touch, all of those things. That's what makes us human. Those things tie into a physiological science. We're very adaptive beings biochemically. All the circuitry that's going on in our body, the meridian points, the hypothalamus, all the glands, reproductive organs, all of these things, they all are regulating through little tiny chemical messengers called hormones. These hormones are powerful. Hormones is just a word we've given it, right? When you think about it, like this body is just a warp. This is a universe. It's an ecosystem. And it comes with a very specific set of instructions. And once those instructions are not read properly and the blueprint is breaking down, then it's chaos theory and it's chaos control and it's trying to control. So for me, understanding what patterns are happening around me that dysregulate the homeostasis in my body is very important to me. And so again, it goes back to the fundamentals of health. And so if we want to talk about those, making sure you're hydrated. If you're not hydrated, you're not electricity profound. And what I mean by that is we are electrical beings before we are chemical. Your entire system right now, your body, your eyes, your brain, your heart, every organ in the body is run through an electrical current. There's voltage in the body that's measured. You can measure the voltage. People talk about your toroidal field, the Merkaba that's coming off you. Well, ultimately, that's the electrical voltage that's coming inherently within you that's turning everything on, which is why it's so important that we're grounding to the earth. What's the point of putting your feet on the earth? It's because of an electrical current coming from the Schumann resonance, which is the breath of our earth. And that dysregulates all the harmful pathogens in our body that are running around like, chickens with their heads cut off, just eating up everything in sight and causing havoc everywhere. It's also why it's important that we're properly mineralized. What are minerals? What is magnesium? What is iodine? What is potassium? What does zinc do? What are all these different minerals do? They all have a unique subatomic charge, an electrical charge, a signature, if you will. And our bodies are made of these minerals. We're from the earth. It's the most fascinating thing when you think about it. We're literally of this earth, our bodies and beings. So that's a very important notion to have in your awareness, is that we literally come from the earth, which means our body behaves like the earth. And so for me, when I start thinking about it, I understand now why we're in the situation we are. Because if you understand something on a biokinetic level and looking at the worldwide collective biochemistry that people are under right now, they're fluoridated, they're filled with harmful contaminants, they got infections all over the place, they're not properly hydrated. Most people are dehydrated. I'd say 70, 80% of the population is completely dehydrated. If you ever have dry mouth, you're dehydrated. Just dry mouth. And that's like the end of the indicator of being dehydrated at the end of the road. Just that alone. Like, you're not hungry, you're thirsty. Drink some spring water, get some sea salt in there, get electricity in the body. You talked about parasites and infections and co-infections and whatever, Lyme disease and candida and all of these different things, fungus, molds, all of those things are a burden on the body that cause the immunological system to spread itself so thin that it's fighting wars all over the place. Helicobacter pylori, H. pylori, right? Many people have H. pylori. What is that? That's getting into the gut. It's getting into the tight junctions. It's causing a cytokine storm, which means the body's reacting to this, material. There's an inflammation havoc. All of a sudden, tight junctions expand. Now you have leaky gut. Now you have things running around all over the body, and it's chaos theory from that point on. Your neurotransmitters aren't manufacturing property. Acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin levels are all over the place. Again, we come from with a set of instructions. So how do we repair all that?
Yeah.
Well, we got to get the fundamentals, Mark. We got to make sure, again, that we're properly mineralized, that we're properly sleeping, that we're grounded to the earth, that we're connected to the earth. I mean that, like, on a deep level, that we're breathing every day. In this conversation, you and I are probably taking short breaths. At least I am. We shouldn't be breathing like that. We should be breathing 4 or 5 times a minute, max.
Isn't that wild?
Deep. We're just mouth breathing around. Right now, Vegas is all over the place. Nerves are all over the place. Excited, kind of in a little bit of fight, flight, hide, little bit. It's
Yeah.
good for moments. It gets us charged up. It activates us, but we got to go back to baseline. We can't stay in that fight, flight like why zebras don't get ulcers. I highly recommend that book. Our ability to find our root health and our equilibrium state is key. And we need to get uncomfortable from time to time, but it has to be explosive uncomfortableness. It can't be dysregulated, chronic. Very same thing with inflammation. We're supposed to have inflammation. If you don't have inflammation, your body cannot respond to stress or heal anything. You sprain your ankle gets swollen. It's supposed to get inflamed. Your body is sending blood there, white blood cells, growth factors, everything, protein, enzymes to heal that injury to that tissue. What do? We ice it. We constrict it. For what? You're not supposed to do that. That needs to heal. The problem is that we have 1,000 sprained ankles going on throughout the body, micro amounts, and that's dysregulating us. That's pulling our immune system apart. Now, if we come across Helicobacter in drinking water or in the shower, we don't have the reserves, the natural killer cells to fight that off. We don't have the proper hydrochloric acid in our gut to fight that off. So we have to, it's this game of how our health works, staying in the health span, not going in the disease span, is really just about neutralizing where your focus is in your body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The more misdirection we have, the more nights that you're not sleeping properly, the more nights that you are engaging in strange behavior, all of these things, you're just taking your immune system and causing it to stretch further and further. And at some point, the line gets so thin that things break through it. And that's when genetic diseases might start. That's when autoimmune diseases start. Things get triggered. We talk about epigenetics, epi being the genetic profile, but your environment is the epigenetic factor. It's
Right.
what dictates everything from turning on or turning off. All of us are different in ways. You've heard of it. Someone has an uncle that was, smoking 2 packs of Marlboro Reds and drinking
It's so
Jack
true.
Daniels all day long and lived to be 110, right? That whole thing right there, that whole scenario, I'm pretty sure that guy didn't feel good when he was 50.
Probably
Okay?
not.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to live to 500 years young. I'm not. I want to reach peak potential in this life. I want to maximize my time. And if the side effect of me doing that is longer life, better aesthetics, better physical body, then so be it. Great.
Right.
But my focus when I'm doing in my rituals and my practices, Mark, is to be the best potential version of myself, physically, spiritually, mentally, maximum connection to my mind, thoughts, being able to bridge pathways, almost like on a psychedelic level,
Uh-huh.
going into ranges of ideas and being able to hold those thoughts and come back around and attach that thought to another idea and concept and let that root into another system, very AI like, I guess, on what they're trying to achieve, but I can do it on my own faculties.
Right.
That's really what it is. It's like, do you have it in you to want to be the highest level of potential? Do you want to be a Jedi? Do you want to be a ninja? I'm glad we got here. This is, I think, is the problem. People have lost the desire for this. They've given up.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to survive. And when you have a population of a majority of the population that is just in survival mode, then you see what happens. That's it right there, Mark. We're in survival mode. We're not stepping into this mission of being all that we can be. It sucks. Like,
Yeah, it
yeah,
does.
because I need my neighbor in their practice being the best version of themselves. And I say this without judgment. I say this out of empathy. To become a human being, that took a lot of energy. A lot of people had to kill themselves for us to be here.
Right.
I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to have these conversations and to be in my body and to be able to breathe every day and see, to talk to someone who's been in a wheelchair for 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we have to really, like, stop thinking about things that we think we don't have and really be grateful for everything we do have. And it's in that moment of gratitude that we're like, okay, I'm really going to step into really turning myself into something great here, because
Mm,
I have that will within me. And it starts with that self-love and creating momentum. I think we talked about that in our live that we did. Is my whole thing's about momentum, and momentum can go any direction,
hmm
right? Listening to this podcast, drinking some clean water, getting sea salt in your body, getting on Cymbiotika, sprinting every day, start lifting some heavy weights, jump in a cold plunge, get uncomfortable, lose a couple friends that it's not working out for you, or maybe look yourself in the mirror and seeing how you're showing up for other people, and are you an antagonist in other relationships, and really do some evaluation. Can you imagine if 50% of the world right now just stepped into their dharma?
Oh my God.
Where would we be? Could we be controllable the way we are being controlled right now? Of course not.
Alan Watts has a line where he says, when you wake up to conscious choice, you become the God you were taught to praise. I think what's fascinating about that is that it's not saying I am God, but we are, like you, I, when we recognize that we're not being apathetic about our potential. And, I firmly believe that unlived potential, like knowing you can be better and not being it, is actually the greatest source of addiction. Like it's the greatest source of the need to be on your phone, addicted to, in toxic relationships. When you talked about healing, one, healing internally, right? Like me starting to replenish minerals, drink clean water, eat nutritious foods, kick out the foods that aren't. And then we have the external. Okay, what's my environment like? And those are not separate things, right? Like those are what I'm fascinated in the human experience is how your environment can get so bad that you change your environment and then your internal systems start to change to match the cleaner environment that you've created. But on the other side, and this is why I think food and exercise are maybe the most powerful catalysts to change, is that if I just start eating better for 1 week and moving my body, I will feel way better. And so I will now want to have boundaries in my life because I want to preserve what's going on. Because when someone tries to change a romantic relationship or how they date, the feedback isn't necessarily immediate, right? Like the shift in their internal system isn't necessarily immediate. It's sort of like a delayed, because the body has to catch up, and so if they say no to a toxic person, yeah, they feel proud of themselves, but like the beliefs are just starting to be excavated. But when you change what you consume, and not just on a media level, but food wise first, supplements, and also movement, your whole life will to me, that is those are the seeds. It feels like it all just comes so full circle, because what I see so much in the communities I move through or like am part of, and the people I talk to, is that there is a deep craving for both village and being back on the land. Like being back, like you said, hands in the soil. You were talking about the benefits at the very beginning of just having a dog, like what it does for your microbiome, what it does for your well-being, that it creates responsibility. And it's almost like through just such levels of apathy and the marketing we're sent. Oh, if you don't look young for your whole fucking life, then you're not valuable, especially as a woman. Which is such a toxic message, because I saw this fucking billboard that belonged to a plastic surgeon that said, "Start now, stay the same age." And I was like, fuck you. That's so manipulative. And why would anyone want to stay the same age? Like, I understand the desire for vitality, but for me, it's like 21-year-old Mark, definitely a total disaster compared to today. Thank the Lord. But I look back and I'm like, if we reject the aging, then inherently we reject the wisdom that comes with aging. Those aren't separate. You can't not value elders and then value your own aging process. It's just impossible, which means you can't unlock the wisdom that actually comes with aging. And this is no judgment if people want to, inject stuff in their head or whatever it is. It's just like, for me, I don't know, and I don't judge it. I can't consciously When I started losing my hair when I was like 29 or something, I went on a hair loss drug, which I then quit taking because I realized that there's nothing for free. I knew this was a testosterone blocker. I know how the product works. And when I finally woke up to what I was doing, which was saying how I look is more important than my health, like having hair, people seeing me with hair matters more than anything. That was not true. I was really felt the pain of what taking that pill was saying, which is I'm not okay as I am. And maybe it's true, and that's why I say, I like, if you're listening and you've done these things, this is not judgment. This is just purely from a soul and psychological level. I don't know how you can alter yourself. I don't even know where the line is, because there's for sure a line, but I don't know how you can alter yourself and love yourself. And yet, I have a friend who's had a crease across their head for their whole life, and when they finally got Botox, their just whole demeanor changed. And so I can love and respect that. And I'm not saying when people have deformities, that's a whole other can of worms. I'm just saying on like a whole level, we're so obsessed with all this moving away from what is natural. And to me, that just makes us, as you said, easy targets. It makes us easy targets for marketing, and that we're never good enough. It's always the next thing, you know?
The desire to be desired is a parasitic influence in this world. Are we blaming someone for wanting to look attractive and the
No,
way
of
I
course not.
cut my hair, my haircut, and the way I take care of myself? Of course, I want to be attractive. Of course, I want to exemplify health, but at what cost and for what reason? I think we all have our own little mission in this world. Sometimes we think we're greater than what it really is, or maybe it's the opposite. We don't have any confidence. We don't know our potential. We're all coming from different places with different identities, and I don't think you and I are judging anyone for any individual thing that they want to, upgrade in their life.
Right. I don't get to choose for them, right? Like I get that.
Correct.
And that's why I recognize the sensitivity of the subject.
Yeah, and I know I've said some things publicly, and I know that it struck a chord with many people, and they felt like they were getting called out because of it. I think the conversation where it's heading is we just have to start understanding again who's controlling our desire and what is our perception of self. Is our perception of self and the way that we operate, is it based on how we perceive others perceiving us? Right, we've almost shifted
Mhm.
into this actor where we're playing the role that we think people want to see, or are we living in our true identity? And who's pulling the strings of all that? Is that coming from our free will, or is that coming from trauma that happened in second,
Mm. Yeah.
or is that coming from a mother that was nagging you your entire childhood and telling you were something you're not, or whatever? It could be anything. And we got to get to that root, because we can't continue to be prisoners to these types of incidents and these types of experiences. It's such a travesty knowing how many lives go unfulfilled because they were not able to tap into that shadow and see exactly what lays beneath. And so the system is just profiting off this. Don't mistake it for a second. The system has been designed by people and energies that have a very, very specific position, and they are definitely using all their brain power and all their resources. We're talking about MIT, Wharton. We're talking about some of the most analytical types institutions, and these are the people that are driving a lot of these industries and creating a paradigm where we're not seeing the true beauty. Only on the surface is where we're seeing the beauty, and we think the beauty holds. And I think there's a big portion of the population that has basically taken the bait for that. But there are others that are still in their original form,
Hmm.
that haven't been infiltrated and are, you know, beating to their own drum, beating to their own sound. And those are the people that I ride with, and those are the people that I love, and those are the people that I honor. And it's not always easy to be independent of the group, but at the end of the day, you know, we come into this world alone, we die alone, and that's the truth of it. And so at the end of the day, what are we doing here? Are we just looking to appease and find someone else that's gonna love us for the shallow reasons?
Hmm.
And so it's a trip because I live in Southern California, and I spend a little bit of time in Los Angeles, and I see that a lot in that kind of realm. That's hyper materialism at the highest level. And it's really like your people's self-worth is based on all these things: looks, money, likes, whatever, social status, and all that kind of stuff. I just had a really nice time over the weekend with I spent the weekend with Kelsey Grammer, and he's got a lot of codes for me, because he's been through it all. He's been through that Holly weird shit for 30,
Holly
40,
weird.
50 years.
Yeah.
Me and him are cut from the same cloth in terms of thoughts and just our perspective. We're very, very similar. And so for me, I learn from my elders. I respect my elders. I want to be around my elders. I am forever a student. I have that level of respect and honor. And it's interesting. I think you brought up the elderlies and what's going on with, if someone is aged or whatever, then we've lost respect for them, or we don't see their value, or they're not
We
attractive,
discard them. Yeah.
discard them. That is the biggest travesty to our karma here, in my opinion, one of the biggest ones. The way we're raising kids and the way we're taking care of the elderly and supporting them is just an abomination. That's a passion of mine after Symbiotika moves forward, is to really focus on that, because they are the wisdom keepers. They have so much to offer us, and that's going to be us one day.
Right.
And it's like, it's just, how did we lose the level of empathy there? It's possible that people's microbiotas are just so dysfunctional, and there's zero balance, that they can't even properly form neurotransmitters of love and produce oxytocin and produce anandamide, the bliss molecule. So we might be so detonated physically that the spirit can't reside in there, and we
Mm.
can't find those things. It's very possible. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And I think they're both swirling side by side. We're really in interesting times, Mark.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember listening to this audio where they were talking about like traumas that fracture our soul, and then that the work in our lifetime is actually to go get the pieces back and like, I guess, reassemble, kind of like a transformer. And some of us are born into different circumstances that mean different fragmentations, and we have more work in this incarnation. And that doesn't seem fair, but almost like part of the work is processing the idea that there's a lack of fairness. Behind their social media profiles, everyone's got their stuff.
Are you talking about victimhood here? Are you talking about the victim mentality?
Yeah, I mean the victim mentality in general, and virtuosity. Virtuosity is killing me. It's like I was listening to Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan's podcast, his latest one that he did with him. And it was super fascinating because Jordan Peterson made a good point. He said, at this point, you don't even have to, you just have to post that you're against climate change, and all of a sudden you're considered a good person. You don't even have to recycle anything. You just have to say, I want to reduce carbon, even though, what does that even mean? And I mean, that's a whole other subject, because I watched the same, while I certainly think there are climate things going on, and you talked about pollution, I think I watched the same propaganda machines moving, the same messaging, just like I do with war, just like, and now I just don't, I'm like, all right, where was truth ever? And it's not found through these media organizations that are trying to feed me what is true about the world, or, you know, certain science and et cetera. Or, like science doesn't talk about nutrition, not until recently. So that tells me I don't really have a lot to trust there, and anyways, all that said, it's like when people present as being this really incredible person, that's what they lead with, and they need you to believe it. I don't trust it at all. It's just another form of false, it's like they're leading with that and they desire, in the research on virtuosity, they've shown that people who need to be seen or desire to be seen as virtuous are more likely to lie in order to appear that way.
Makes
So
total sense.
so it's not actually embodied. It's not true because they're perception managing. And when you're perception managing, you're not present. And then you add to that victim mindset, which I never wanted to be experienced, that I'm negating the actual experience of being a victim. Of course not. When society has propped these two things up, that it just, to me, it's like it again sort of railroads the ability to be in responsibility, to be in your power. And victim mindset and virtuosity they create power, they source power. It's just a very passive, indirect way of getting power, pretending you're powerless. I could go on about that one.
No, I mean, I think we can do a whole conversation on victim mentality.
How does that affect us biologically?
I mean, it shuts down our immune system for sure. It shuts down our body's pH, our percentage of hydrogen. There's testing on that. It shuts down your mental faculty of wanting to persevere and go a step further. If you're in victim, you're not going to go jump in a cold plunge. You're going to stay on your phone and look for other problems and sit and strategize, more strategizing and more strategizing of sadness and pain and anger and frustration. And you're always blaming something, and it's like, here's the reality. Some people got born into this life with a silver spoon, and that could be a poison in a way. And some people got born with absolutely nothing except a tough road. That could be a poison in a way, but both of them could be the absolute medicine. It's really just what you're willing to step through and face. And so I see victimhood all the time. I see it a lot with people's health. It's almost like a hypochondriac type energy where everything's falling apart, can't get anything right, can't stick to anything, jumping from this to this, yo-yo dieting, always excited when they meet someone who's speaking a certain, philosophy of health, and then 2 months later they're going somewhere else, not sticking with it. The isms in health play their part to perfection, right? Radically polarizing and things of that nature, versus hardcore vegan, then it's hardcore carnivore, then it's hardcore keto, then it's hardcore paleo, then it's hardcore whatever. Maybe it's breatharian, who knows? It just keeps going, which is why I speak of myself as a qualitarian, flexitarian, and just finding harmony and balance with the seasons. We are not victims of our circumstance, but we're alchemists, and that's the true philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone was not a bunch of crazy chemists and alchemists using mercury to convert lead into gold. The true philosopher's stone is to metaphorically, figuratively, physically, spiritually build your legacy and root your system, even if it was born out of ash, to
Mm.
really form that into your conscious and grow and evolve. That's the philosopher's stone. That's what a lot of the ancient practices and wisdom's all about. I love the I love the journey that unfolds, and I love keep growing in my connections and things of that nature. What I've noticed is when I'm on the path, when I'm doing the things, hypersynchronicity starts to kick in.
So true.
It's real, and it's you can feel it. Some of these things are unquantifiable by any standard form of mathematics. It's just, you can't process how that even happened. And just like anything else, you start keeping going, and then you start opening your eyes, and then you start flexing your intuition. And that's another thing that I believe needs to start coming back into the fold. We've kind of lost our intuitive prowess, our intuitive power. We've left it all to chance. We don't believe in anything outside of what we can touch. And that's robbing us of the unique, abilities we have outside of the material world. And so there's many ways to practice intuition. or clairvoyance or, some type of connection, but a healthier body, a hydrated body, a body that's not stuck to, some perpetual dismantling system, that's not being constantly fed poison in every facet of every sense, is going to have a higher ability to reach that level of intuition versus the latter. And so I think that's part of the wisdom that I'm bringing to the world, at least in my own way, is I don't tell people everything. Does that make sense? I don't
Mm-hmm.
tell you this is how it is. This is the only way. I just drop clues because I want people to be inspired to have that trigger something in them and have them start flexing their intuitive muscle
Mm.
and practicing discernment. Once they discern and it looks like it's something that it's appealing, then they keep going. They're taking that on themselves. I'm not some savior. I don't hold that energy whatsoever. I just want to be kind of like the matchmaker in clues and ideas. It's like a little wizard sprinkling little magic and crumbs. That's really like my passion. I love that type of work.
It sounds to me like the first part of this coming back to, let's say, wholeness, or like coming back into ourselves, our bodies, into health. It sounds to me like it is one about, as you said, getting back into these rituals, getting back into these practices, getting back into nature, and removing ourselves from sort of the toxicity of the messaging, and being discerning about our level of engagement with technology, what's heavy in our lives, what's light, what's nutritious, what's not. And I don't think humans need a lot of guidance on that. That shit's pretty fucking obvious.
There it is. Bingo. Best thing we've said. It's obvious, people.
It
Sunlight's
is.
good for you.
Yeah, and
Climbing a
like,
tree is good for you.
I think the one thing humans need to know is that seed oils are really bad for you and sugar is really bad for you. Like those, but those are in abundance in everything, right?
Not in my life.
Yeah, well, the more you pay attention to things like that, like they sneak palm oil into fucking like even Whole Foods is things that they have, like their cashews and stuff. They just sneak oils in them. I'm like, why are you doing this? You should know. But that's also me thinking that they have a positive intention other than wealth. If health sells, it becomes popular.
That's right.
So, what are some of the sort of baseline, other than water and mineralization? And maybe you can explain a bit how we mineralize. What are some of the sort of essential nutrients or supplements most people should be taking? And obviously, I want to preface this with like everyone go get individual consultation, but just what do you see on a population level?
Fermented foods. I think fermented foods have a real strong position in the core of our health. And so that's any type of fermented vegetable, sauerkraut, kimchi, things like that. Some cheeses, raw cheeses, very good. It's filled with super nutrients, including K2, which was discovered by Dr. Weston Price. And it's the fat soluble vitamin that basically activates our body's ability to absorb calcium, which is extremely important for everyone, men, women, children, adults, elderly, everything. Sclerotic disease is on the rise. Heart disease is the number one killer. A lot of that has to do with calcification of the arterial walls. People are not getting enough K2, and you can get that from fermented foods. I think a balanced diet, a macro micro diet of just eating things that are versatile, things that are loaded with high nutrient content. As I said, I'm a qualitarian, so I'm eating pretty diverse foods, a balance between plant and animal based. I honor and respect and revere the animal world. I do not participate in commercial agriculture, big block commercial agriculture. I think it's one of the darkest practices. I do support local farms. I do support the Amish. I do support field kill animals that are not sitting in stress and adrenalizing all that poison all over their body and then taking on that karma when you're eating it. I think that's a real thing. I'm a big fan of organ meat. I'm a big fan of eating mono fruit, like mono fruiting, so eating specific fruits. and just going berserk with that fruit and not like mixing like 8 different kinds of fruit. So like on our farm in Hawaii, when I'm there, sometimes for a week straight, I'm just eating coconut. That's all I'm eating. Or I'm just eating soursop, or I'm just eating durian, or I'm just eating mangoes. There's something to monofruiting, especially if you're cleansing and doing things like that. Raw milk. Raw milk's a medicine, in my opinion. A2 cows specifically is what I would source if you have access to it. I love eating raw egg yolks. You don't want to cook the yolk, denatures the yolk. There's tons and tons of nutrients and enzymes and all kinds of stuff, vitamins in the yolk, healthy cholesterol too that you want. You want to cook the white, don't want to eat the whites raw.
How do you separate them?
You break the egg into like a bowl and then spoon out the yolk.
Oh, right on. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Just make sure you're sourcing from the right places and getting your own chickens and tend your own chickens. That's always the best way. You can feed them all your scraps. It just goes right back into you. It's epic.
Yeah.
And they're good at they're nitrogen fixers because they're pooping all over the soil, and it's great. Again, tend the garden. That's really what it is. My house here, we have 29 fruit trees now. We have 15 different herbs, perennial herbs. Just most of the stuff coming off the land is just going directly into my belly. There's a beauty to that. We do a
Yeah.
lot of bone broth here as well. Big fan of broths. Think it's extremely nourishing for the gut lining, the mucosa membrane, and your epithelial layer in the gut throughout the GI tract. Just proper supplementation. There's so many supplements out there. And of course, I'm biased because of Cymbiotika, but, at the end of the day, we are leading the way. And I have the confidence to say that, you know, we are the fastest growing lifestyle brand, supplement brand in the world right now, which is really, really interesting to
That's
say that.
incredible.
It's,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. And we have the most epic team, and everybody's all in. And we're doing things that have never been done before in that space. Very, very thoughtful formulations and doing things outside the box and taking risks. That's really where we're at right now. And so if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, well, what do I eat all day long? First remove what you shouldn't be eating.
Mm.
I think that's the first thing. So if you're eating any processed foods, if you're eating any, flours that are deflated of nutrients, if you love bread and you need to find like, a real like sourdough that's been grown properly and, that's got all the bacterial strains that you want. If you're into dairy, you can't be eating hormone filled pasteurized dairy that's insanely toxic to your body, insanely toxic to your brain and to your organs. You want no part of that. Maybe you want to try fasting for some time. I think fasting is one of the most important things we can do. It's what we empirically know is hitting our survival sirtuin pathways of activating longevity.
Hmm.
Just don't eat for a day. And I'm not talking about everyone intermittent fasting. I'm just saying maybe you take a day or two off every 2 weeks and give your body 48 hours of no food. Try that. If you're a coffee drinker, start getting conscious with your coffee drinking. If you're unconsciously drinking coffee, then you're doing no good, just like anything else. How are you eating your food? That's another thing. Are you
Mm.
just like in the mix, just get stuff in your face? Or are you sitting down, praying to your food, connecting to your food, and present with every bite and every chew? Because it's a completely different integration when you're present with your food and eating your food on that level versus multitasking and your brain is somewhere else. Think about it. Like we just take for granted what eating food is. Food is like it's a merging of worlds. It's a merging of we're devouring and consuming something that becomes us.
Yeah. It's wild.
That's a biodynamic perspective. Again, that's like how we grow food. We're not just sitting there. We don't just drop a seed and walk away. No way. We understand exactly our cosmology. We know where the planets are. We know where the waxing and waning of the moon is. We know what celestial body is over us. We know where the eclipses are. We have the time zones. We do everything. We have the crystals, the herbs, the black gold manure sitting in the middle of the farm. This is all part of biodynamics practices. And what that teaches you is that everything is so intricate. It's so dynamic. There's so much involved, and so are we as beings, just on common eating dinner, you
Right.
know? Maybe you want to stop eating dinner at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Maybe your last meal should be at 4 p.m. You know, that's something that I've been doing lately and feeling really good. Some people have their intermittent flipped over where they don't eat till noon, and then their windows like, noon to like 6 o'clock, noon to 7 o'clock, or whatever. I'm tending to find that the earlier I have my last meal, the better. My
Yeah.
sleep is better. My rise is better. I'm waking up hungry, like my ghrelin, which is my hunger hormone, is on, which is good because it's good to eat food on the rise because it gives me energy throughout the day where I'm not feeling crashed and stuff because I'm so involved with so many things that I need that energy, right?
Hmm.
And I think everyone's life's different. So it's like, look at your reality. Like, are you like some yogi that's living on the island, or are you in the grit of everyday hustle? Your diets are going to be different. And this doesn't have to be this forever. We get into this thing like, oh, however I'm going to eat right now is the way I'm going to eat 20 years from now. That's false. It doesn't work that way. We have cycles in this life. Your body's evolving, your body's changing. Are there constants? For sure. But like for me, for example, this is the heaviest I've been in a while. I weigh about 205 right now. I've been hitting the gym hard. I've been lifting heavy weights, feeling really good about it. But in order to do that, I had to change my diet a little bit, right? I had to up a few things. I needed a little bit more carbs. I needed a little bit more protein. I needed a little bit more healthy fats. My food had to revolve a little bit more around my workouts.
Hmm.
So you just got to get clever with what your reality looks like. There's not one system that fits. You have to design a system that fits your life. That's a very important aspect of health, very important aspect of dieting. People try to fit something into something else, and it doesn't work most of the time because we're all individual and we have individual energies and individual lifestyles, individual doshas. If you follow the Ayurvedic train, there's so many different things that we have to look at. And so I think getting very surgical with what your desire is. Are you looking to put on more muscle? Are you looking to lose a little bit of weight? Or do you want to just get more fluid? Those are going to dictate what foods you're going to put in your body. And then also seasons. Like we're in the northern latitude, so it's cold here, it's winter here. So right now I'm doing more broths, right? I'm doing more nourishing foods because it's the yin energy, right? We're like hibernating,
Hmm.
right? And then as spring starts to come around, and then we start rolling into summer, then I'm eating more foods that are more jing, more electric, more fruits, right? I'm getting more into that whole chain. We got to start looking at our where we are in this world, our cosmos, our cosmology, and reflect that inward and take that step by step. And then also where you live. Start asking who's growing the best food, who's doing it right. Where are the local farmers? Where's the farmers market? Who's got the best eggs in town? Who's got the best dairy? Who's making the best fermented food, right? Like that's a little bit of discipline, right?
Right.
And you never know. You might meet your best friend. You might meet your lover. You might meet your future, lover that's going to carry your children or have children with. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's part of like being human. If your reality is like going to the nightclubs every weekend and doing that whole thing, that's who you're going to meet. I don't mean that with like judgment, but that's just the circle you're around. So again, put yourself in a position to succeed. And by your thirst and eternal quest for being the best version of yourself, you're going to meet your tribe along the way,
Hmm.
because that's the law of attraction. You know, that's the real law of attraction. It's like what your frequency is really what's going to be respondent to you and be attracted to you, right? I mean, that's how I've met most of my crew and my friends and my best friends and all that stuff outside of my friends from like childhood. It's because we share the same interests. We're into the same stuff. That's what we can talk about. So, another riff.
Well, no, not a small journey to that space of alignment, but also a beautiful one. And I think it's in AA that they say it's about progress, not perfection. And what you're inviting is that we just follow the synchronicities, just keep alignment, alignment, alignment. I always say when I don't really know where I'm supposed to go, I just say, show me the way, I'll walk it. Just like show me the next step. Often we just get obsessed with like, what's the final, like, where am I going to be? If I go this way, what's it going to be? But life will always add twists and turns, and I think it really comes back to, are you living in your fullest and highest potential? Are you in integrity with what you value in this life? And most of us aren't, because it's normal to not be. And so this is this active rebellion that really releases you from the system so that you can really embody sovereignty. And I man, I so enjoy our conversations. I feel like we need to sit down in person and just Joe Rogan it up, like 3 hour, just go into each thing.
100%. I feel really comfortable in our conversations, and it allows us to freely, explore the mind. It's not repetitive or empirical, left brain mechanistic. It's free thought and free flowing. And you're right, we got to be able to be uncomfortable with the unknown.
It's the
We
answer to
want
it
to have
all,
the
I think.
solution for everything. We want to know the answer before we get around the corner. We want to know what happens at the end of the movie before we get there, right? We can't just sit in the unknown, in the void. And that's Steiner again, the philosophy of freedom. That's one of his first write-ups, and that's really what we're talking about here. It's like, what is true freedom?
Yeah.
Freedom is being comfortable not knowing, you know.
Mm.
And if you choose to want to know, you're making that choice, and it's not from a place of fear. It's a decision that you've made. That's powerful.
Yeah, to say yes to the adventure of life and let it be an adventure. Like,
Yeah.
anything is going to go somewhere and you try to control, it's not an adventure. Like, you're not in curiosity. And what is love and what is connection? It's curiosity. You'll never know everything about your partner. And the idea that you do is just, it's just ego. Like, you can't pause it. They're changing all the time, and so are we. And maybe when we stay in stagnation, we believe that they do too, the projection. But yeah, Chervin, where can people find more of you and Cymbiotika and all that kind of stuff? And we'll put the links in the show notes.
They can find me. I'm only on Instagram, and the new podcast, which you were the first guest of our newest upcoming season, Wake the Fake Up, which I love that podcast. I learned a
Such a great
lot
name.
from that. That was really powerful. So yeah, just Symbiotika. I think people know our company and what we're up to, and they'll probably be able to find me through you, because
Yeah,
I look
absolutely.
forward to doing more of these and getting out on the land with you, and going in ceremony with you, and going into that realm, which is another big topic we can get into next time, is really understanding sacred medicine and what their purpose of these entheogens are in this realm, and what they're bridging in this realm, and how to really approach it responsibly, and doing it with pure discernment and pure reverence for the indigenous. And that's something that I take very, very serious. And we can go into that and how that manifests into beautiful love and integrity and cathartic releases and trauma releases, and really paving the way of a new bound life, a new purpose life.
Beautiful. I totally agree. And my friend, thank you so much for being here today.
Mark, create the love, baby.